I've had this quote that you can see on the screen in front of me for the last few weeks. And the reason that it sort of it felt like a good thing to have in front of me, I took it away from an offsite planning session that I had with an executive group. And I was just reminded of how critical it is for us to be focused and intentional about the time that we have. Um, I'm conscious of the fact that post-COVID, we've all had this, well, I don't know, we've all had, but my experience of post-COVID is that we've all had some different experiences around time, and that time sort of moves in some different and interesting ways. And I think this was definitely a theme during the pandemic, where we had, people relating experiences of how time flies and does not. The time that you spend, waiting in the doctor's office is not the same, even though it might be the same elapsed time. It definitely doesn't have the same experience as time that you spend maybe hanging out with your family or friends, or going for a walk with your dogs, or choosing a new shade of fabulous lipstick. So I always feel like our perception of time can change depending on the circumstances, so how we find ourselves or where we find ourselves actually depends on sort of how we perceive time. I don't know whether you're familiar with this sort of like, I've seen this on quotes or sort of heading through social media. We all have the same number of hours in the day as Beyonce. And I often think about the fact that, I'm an incredibly talented performer and artist, right? But, what she gets done in the day and what I get done in the day are perhaps, worlds apart. She, of course, has an amazing team around her. And part of today is looking at some of the people that you have around you and whether or not those relationships are actually building where you want to go. Have you ever heard of the idea of time being like a jar, or your planning capacity being a little bit like a jar? So this old story, and I cannot tell you where it comes from, but it's about sort of like how do you put rocks in a jar? So if you've got big rocks and smaller rocks and then a pile of sand, if you put the sand in first and then the small rocks, then you don't have any space left for the big rocks. Whereas if you choose to put the big rocks in first, then you can usually fit some of the smaller rocks in around the big rocks, and then the sand sort of like squishes in around all the gaps. So this is an analogy that sort of stayed with me for a very long time around planning. And there was actually a nice version of telling this story about sort of putting the big things in first and then the smaller things around it and then the sand in. And there was then sort of an aspect of, if you tipped some water on top of that, you could actually probably even put water in on top of the jar, which was equivalent to always being able to make time for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with a loved one. So if we think about life having sort of these big pieces of effort and then perhaps some sort of mid-sized or smaller pieces of effort. So in my life, maybe some of those big pieces of effort are big projects or big engagements with clients. Some of those smaller pieces might be getting weekends away or time to recharge, or the idea of spending some time with family. So I've popped in the chat a planner worksheet. So this planner worksheet you should be able to download from the 6hour website. And I've also popped in the chat just now the option, the 2025, what I call a plan on a page. And the plan on a page is something that I put on my wall each year, and I use it as a sort of milestone marker of how am I moving through the year. So the worksheet's designed to for us to work through today. And if you don't finish it all, that's okay. And if you don't have answers to all the questions, that's okay. It's not about beating ourselves up about what's been or what hasn't. It's just about taking stock of where we are right now and taking a look at what it is that we want to put in the jar for 2025. So if we just take a moment, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to spend just taking some time. How I did this exercise yesterday, and so I'm going to explain to you how I did it. I used the photos on my phone and I went back through the months of the year. What was I doing in each month? So you'll see in the workbook that there's a little grid there that shows, work and life. Now, I've given 2 columns. You might have another column which is, health or finances or whatever. You might have a column that you want to put in there for rewards. So the columns are just there as a guiding starting point. I use work and life because my tendency is to add lots of work things and to forget about the life stuff. So I try to make plans for life as well as making plans for work as I reflect on a year. And I find that if I put in the big things that are important to me, so the things that, the big milestones, then they actually do happen rather than just sort of another year floats past me and I've forgotten to do the fun stuff that I wanted to do. So what I did was I used my photos. I also looked at my wall planner and said, okay, what did I do in April? What was I doing in March? So what's actually been done this year? So just working through in each month, what are the key things that you've actually achieved this year? So they might be, you might have achieved a certification for something, or you might have branched out into a new area of work. You might have taken on a new challenge in your existing role. So for me, one of the achievements that I've had, that I've been able to get to this year, so far this year, I mean, we're in November, but it'll be upon us in a moment, the old end of year craziness. For me, one of the big achievements this year has been finally getting a book written, which is something that I started out around this time last year to achieve. On a personal level, I finally managed to get to New Zealand, which sounds like not a big achievement, but it's been on my list of things to do for a long time. I got to work on a glacier, which was something that I've been wanting to do for years. So there are a couple of highlight achievements for me this year. And as we work through the workbook, it doesn't have to take you a long time. You can just belt in a couple of answers, like what's the first thing that comes to mind? Challenges of the year. If you think about 2024, what challenges has it presented for you? Entertainingly enough, on the same list of things was writing a book. It was a big challenge for me this year. So whilst it might be an achievement, it could also be a big challenge. And finishing that has actually meant quite a bit of, compromise in terms of trading off other things in life to be able to get that done. So some of the other things, on a personal level, there've definitely been challenges around acceptance of, what some other things what other people in life might be doing. And that sort of leads me into relationships. So when I think about relationships in my world, it won't necessarily be the same as my world won't be the same as everybody else's world, but I have a partner who, I need to continue to maintain a relationship with, family, children, friends who are family. There are lots of friends in my life who sort of fill that void of family. I live away from my immediate family. colleagues, so people that I work with, what relationships have I built and what relationships have faded away or have I not put the effort into maintaining. I think also about neighbours and people who I have incidental relationships with. So daily sort of those daily loose, what they call looser relationships. So just thinking about the year, what's happened there. And then moving into sort of perhaps, professional growth. Like what have you done in this area? So if I reflecting on what I've looked at and sort of done a lot of work on this year, I've spent a lot of time experimenting with AI and done a lot of reading about that. I've pushed myself to do more work around facilitation and conversations that have higher meaning and those sorts of things. And that's been something for me this year. Your professional growth would be different, perhaps, again, evolving, shaping teams at work, what may have happened there, taking on a challenge that you perhaps didn't want to take on. How did that go? So just getting to sort of grips with 2024. So what is it, if we come to the end and we have a little look at the summary of 2024, what has that actually brought up for you? And so when I look at my year, I give myself this question. So if I look for the year ahead, what is it that I want to dial up? And the counter question is, of course, what is it that you want to clean out? So giving you a second then to
work on it, like as in confront my fears with it. I've been told many times. Yeah, so no, this is great for me. And
so if you take a look then at the 2025 plan on a page, and this is just one page, so it's less intimidating, right? Or it gives you this sort of helicopter view. I find this helicopter view very helpful because I look at it and I go, well, here are four. If I divide up a year into 4 quarters, and if I give myself 52 weeks, the first thing that I usually do is block out the first 2 weeks of the year because nobody's doing anything. I might have all sorts of aspirations, but there's nobody doing anything. And I've popped in the chat a link to all Australian school holidays. So if you're the kind of person who has kids, and this, when I had kids, my entire life worked around school holidays and what was happening, whether they were in school or not, right? So I would say, okay, I've got 52 weeks, but actually I never really had 52 weeks because there was something like 10 weeks of school holidays throughout the year. So I was like blocking out those school holidays going, well, I'm not as functional or capable in those weeks as I would like to be, but also like what fun kind of things can we do as a family? Like how do I make some memories and joy in those school holidays? And like it's really hard when you've got them coming around every 10 to 12 weeks. So when you're talking about the holiday rocks, I have planned next year already. I have thought about a trip in April and a trip in September, or a period away in both of those times. So, what is it that you want to do in terms of your holiday planning? Like, where do you want to go? What do you want to see? Who do you want to do that with?
I'm definitely planning something in September.
That sounds good.
I know. So there's not a 25 on this sheet. So just scrolling down. So you do that on the yearly planner?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the year on a so basically what I do is I take this. I'm going to show you just one moment while I pause the sharing. I'm going to show you. This is my current one that's on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is on
Mm-hmm.
the wall for me, and each week I mark it off. Each week I also take my week plan and I put it up on my whiteboard so that I don't get distracted because it's incredibly easy. Now that's my process. Not everybody works like that, but there's also I also have a weekly action plan, which is it's got a day by day section and sort of big goals for the week and then what am I actually doing. So I work on a sort of what do I need to do? What are the 3 or 4 big things that I need to do in a week? And then what are all the other little annoying things that I kind of need to squidge in around that? Stuff like getting a glazier to come and fix the damn crack in the window. All those annoying little life tasks that
Oh my
actually
God.
come up.
The
So
list is long.
yeah, the list is long, but this is the thing. When you look at the 52 weeks, you have to dial it back to, well, what is actually, it's not 52, it's less than that. And then what I try to do is then dial it back a little bit less than that as well. So try and work at if you've got 100%, then trying to work at an 80% capacity. And this is something that we do when we're working in projects and project teams as well. We try and dial the capacity back so that we have some space for the emergencies, for the broken window pane or the person who gets sick or somebody's dog needing to go to the vet or all of the life stuff that comes up, not just for me, but also for other people. So, when you're working in a project team, you don't just have your own life going on. You've also got all the concerns and carry on from everybody's life. The number of times you find yourself short-handed or short-staffed because of other things that are going on in people's lives, we really need to give ourselves the space for those emergencies to happen or for, to create space to accommodate that kind of stuff. Or you dial up the human side of it and put on extra hands. Most of the time, we experience people don't actually have capacity to put on extra hands. So yeah. Anyway, so that's a little diversion. But if you start with your 2025 page, usually I start with where are the school holidays, put those big things in. What are the existing commitments that you already have? So, as much as you might, believe yourself to have a clean, clear slate in front of you, there are some things that you already know that you will do in a year, whatever they might happen to be. For me, that'll be there's definitely an event happening in early February. I know that I will want to, be in a certain place in March. There are people in my life who have milestone birthdays and events coming up, and those sorts of things I put in as well. So if I know someone's having a milestone birthday, I just put that in that week that's what's going on. Even though they may not have communicated anything about it, I'll just add it in. And, I come from a big family, so there's nearly a milestone every year. So it's a useful thing to have I don't know, a list of. So um, I'm very aware of those things, and then it doesn't catch you by surprise, and you don't plan something else over the top of it, and then end up feeling emotionally conflicted and overcommitted with, oh, I was planning to do this, and actually this is also important to me. So
And
basically,
Leonie, how do you put this in an editable format? Do you have it in an editable format?
I do. I use a pencil.
Well, I'm
Daggy
just
old
typing on
school.
it with preview, but I think when you close preview, it saves it. So I don't think you can change it. Like,
Oh,
I've opened it in preview on, which is a Mac app, but and you can type you can put text all over it, but it saves it. Okay, so there's pencil's the go.
Pencil is the go. Or that's my go anyway. That's the way I handle it. And I actually do a new one of these every 6 months just to sort of give
Refresh
myself
it.
another rolling 6 months forward, because I get to a point where, unlike you were talking about having, not liking the planning aspect of things, I actually, if I don't have a view out on the horizon, I get sort of anxious.
Yeah.
I like
Yes.
to be able to see ahead and see what's coming.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I guess in terms of like using that calendar, I've got a little link to a video that I've done previously, which I'll also pop in the summary for this session, and it just talks about using it as a team, but you can also use it as just you or your family. So basically, what I try and do is the big rocks, those big things that you're keen to do in 2025. Where do they go? So, for example, I, for some insane reason, decided I was going to do a half marathon. I've signed up for that in the first week of May next year. So I'm looking at my calendar going, right, that's week 18 in May, which means that I need to start training for that like 10 to 12 weeks prior, or I will hurt myself. So, just mapping that back, if that's something that I want to achieve next year, then mapping that back through the year and going, okay, well, what does my training regime look like, and when do I need to start that? And then probably I don't put in all the detail into the weeks, the year on a page. The detail goes into my Outlook calendar, where I just, put my
Yeah.
mind in for myself. But it helps me. I love the helicopter view of it, because it helps me go, okay, do I have some fun things with family in every quarter? Do I have some time with my friends in? Do I have some things that actually feed my soul as well as my work life, milestones? Just helps me to balance out the year.
It's good. Be good one to print out large and put on the fridge.
Yes, I have the A3 version.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
With yeah, that's what I would do with it. So you're
yeah.
looking at it all the time. Yep.
100%.
Awesome. I love it. I need this in my
Okay.
life.
Love this in my life. I'd be happy to. There's a link at the end of the session. I'd be happy to continue to plan that with you if that's something that you want to do together.
I would love that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, we'll close out here because that's the end of our sort of half an hour, our little bite-sized session. You've got some time. Make some time with me, and we can go through that together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is great.
Okay.
I'm just looking through the rest of it. There's lots of great